Long after the sirens fade, a crime scene settles into a quiet chaos. Rain washing over asphalt, the flash of red and blue light catching on a torn piece of clothing, a single drop of blood left behind. When the first investigators step past the yellow tape, they are greeted by a silent victim. A body cannot speak to tell them if its final moments were the result of a calculated murder, a tragic accident, or a desperate suicide. But external forces leave undeniable physical signatures on human tissue and bone. Forensic pathologists read these markers as injury patterns. Because these wounds are strictly governed by the rigid laws of physics and human anatomy, they strip away the ambiguity of the scene. They remain the objective, unaltered record of exactly what happened. Under the clinical light of the autopsy room, one of the most distinct narratives a body can reveal is the instinct to survive. When a person is attacked, their autonomic nervous system triggers an immediate physical reflex to block the incoming strike. This photograph illustrates the typical posture. Defense injuries manifest frequently on forearms, palms, and thumbs. A blunt object yields deep bruises, but defending against a sharp weapon, like this knife, leaves distinct cuts directly across the grasping fingers, webs of the hands, and the palms. In a court of law, these specific markers carry immense weight. They offer objective medical proof that the victim was alive, conscious, and actively aware of the threat at the moment the attack occurred. A laceration on the palm turns a questionable death into a definitive homicide. It confirms that a desperate, active struggle for survival took place. This graph charts horizontal distance against fall height, mapping the physics of massive deceleration. When investigating falls, the total distance dropped is only part of the equation. Trauma severity is primarily determined by exactly where the body makes initial impact. Looking at this diagram of a primary head impact, the resulting trauma is localized but catastrophic. Striking the ground head first causes instantaneous, massive fracturing to both the vault and the base of the skull. Contrast that with the diagram showing a feet-first impact. The ground stops the feet, but the kinetic energy continues to travel violently upward through the skeleton. This column of force shatters the tibia and fibula, snaps the femur, and causes severe fractures throughout the pelvis. These medical photographs of severely bruised soles show the entry point of that shockwave. Once the energy enters the feet, it travels entirely up the vertebral column, ultimately driving the cervical spine upward to create a massive ring fracture at the base of the skull. This anatomical cross-section illustrates a coup-contre-coup injury. Looking at the CT scans on the left, you can track the real-world sequence. The initial impact stops the skull instantly, but the brain's momentum carries it forward, colliding violently with the opposite interior wall of the cranium. Whether it is the shattered pelvis of a feet-first landing or the internal bruising of the brain, a fall leaves a traceable shockwave. That damage perfectly maps the exact orientation of the body at the millisecond of impact. Occasionally, the evidence points not to an attacker or to gravity, but to deliberate deception. Individuals may fabricate injuries to falsely accuse someone else or to fulfill a deep-seated psychiatric compulsion. To identify a staged attack, investigators look for a specific visual signature. Unlike chaotic wounds of a real struggle, fabricated injuries are superficial, closely grouped, and perfectly parallel. Cuts are clustered entirely in highly accessible zones, a reach radius dictated strictly by the dominant hand. There is also the phenomenon of psychological sparing. A person will subconsciously hesitate to damage highly sensitive areas, like the eyes or the lips. They will even purposely shift their clothing out of the way before breaking the skin. A true homicidal attack is blind, deep, and chaotic. In contrast, this calculated hesitation produces clean, straight lines with minimal tissue tearing. Ultimately, a staged crime scene betrays its creator. The cautious, controlled geometry of intent and hesitation leaves a physical scar that looks absolutely nothing like a panicked, erratic fight for survival. Witness statements can be fabricated, memories can be manipulated, and victims can be permanently silenced. But the kinetic reality of a physical wound is an imprint of physics that simply cannot be faked. These microscopic patterns of force, hesitation, and impact form an unbroken chain of evidence. They travel from the cold surface of the autopsy table directly to the courtroom, serving as the empirical backbone of a final legal verdict. And when the measurements are taken, the photographs filed, and the analysis complete, the investigation finally reaches its end. While a wound on the living might heal and fade into a faint scar, forensic medicine guarantees something far more enduring. It ensures that the strict, unyielding truth of what happened will always outlive the victim.